Okay, time now to take a look at the latest business news. And well, there's more trouble for Boeing and its 737 MAX planes. To tell us about that, we're joined on set by our business editor, Stephen Carroll. Stephen, sounds bad for Boeing.
The timing really couldn't be worse for Boeing. The company says that it has discovered debris in the fuel tanks of several 737 MAX jets that had been built in the past year but not yet delivered to airlines. Now, this was the model that was grounded almost a year ago worldwide over safety concerns. The debris was discovered during maintenance on parked planes, although Boeing hasn't said exactly how many jets were affected. Metal shavings or other objects left in fuel tanks during assembly can increase the risk of short circuits or fires. The head of the 737 programme at Boeing telling staff in an internal memo this discovery was absolutely unacceptable. A company spokesman said they've increased inspections of fuel tanks as a result, and that the issue wouldn't affect efforts to have regulators certify the plane to return to the skies this summer. Meanwhile, shares in Chinese airlines have risen today on reports the government there is considering a bailout for the sector. Bloomberg is reporting that options being considered include a massive cash injection or merging smaller carriers into larger ones to prevent their collapse. The vast majority of flights in China have been cancelled due to the coronavirus outbreak. Industry research group OAG Aviation Worldwide says the shutdown has reduced the size of the Chinese aviation market to the same size as Portugal's. Well, let's take a look at what's happening on the markets for you next. European shares opening up. They're bouncing back after yesterday's falls. London, Paris and Frankfurt all in the green. We're seeing a recovery in a lot of China-sensitive stocks, things like luxury groups and mining companies that rely heavily on China. They're doing better today. This is the number of new cases of coronavirus seems to be stabilising. In Asian trading earlier, a similar picture, most markets trading up, investors trying to shake off the latest worries over coronavirus. Just the Shanghai Composite dipping back into the red towards the end of its trading day there. On the currency markets, meanwhile, we're keeping an eye on the value of the euro because it dipped to a 3-year low against the dollar overnight. It's under $1.08 for the first time since 2017. That's been partly driven by a rise in the value of the dollar, but also some weak economic data from the Eurozone in recent days. The euro also trading for 83 pence sterling. Now, back here in France, talks between the government and unions are continuing over the controversial pension reforms. This as politicians begin examining thousands of amendments to the bill in Parliament. Now, opposition to these reforms led to massive transport strikes and demonstrations in December and January. One union has already quit the talks after just one day. Catherine Viette reports.
113 billion euros. That's the latest projected deficit in the retirement system by 2030, according to the French government. The unions say the timing of this announcement was planned to exert maximum pressure.
At every meeting, there's new figures, calls for reform amendments, for new measures, and now this 113 billion euros. It's the first time I'm hearing this figure.
Most have accepted the timing of the announcement and the new method of calculation. Until now, the government has just highlighted a 12 billion euro deficit in 2027 if reforms aren't undertaken.
It's important to point out that this is not a deficit for just 1 year, so it's urgent to find solutions, to find a balance.
The unions say the government is responsible for the system's growing deficit by eliminating certain social insurance contributions, like on overtime, or by lowering the employer's dues. And they've warned they won't accept a proposal that sees employees contributing more to close the gap.
Our main objective is to have measures in which the three players contribute. That's only fair. If it's simply the employees who have to pay the deficit, this will not be acceptable to us.
The pension overhaul has triggered a series of street protests and a long-running transport strike. Opponents have accused the government of not being transparent about the proposed reforms, while unions say it will result in lower pensions for some parts of the workforce.
Finally, for me, Google's parent company has pulled out of a venture that aimed to build power-generating kites. Makani was one of the so-called moonshot projects that Alphabet was investing in since 2013. But boss Sundar Pichai is under pressure to reduce the other bets that lost the company almost $5 billion last year. Makani was developing airborne wind turbines which would fly up to 300 metres above the sea, tethered to floating buoys. In a blog post, McCanny's founder said that they would press ahead with efforts to develop the technology without Google's backing. Eve.
Thanks a lot, Stephen. Stephen Carroll there, our business editor, with all the latest updates.